Until this day, people are still controlled under a MK Ultra still. Basically, MK Ultra is a mind control program. It was a human experimental program designed and undertaken by the CIA. It was made by the CIA. They will use LSD to weaken individuals' confessions through brainwashing, psychological torture. The CIA will use this method called deep patterning. So they will give these patients drugs to reduce their mind so they can take over their mind. Basically take over you, basically your personality, everything. They put patients under a sleep treatment. The CIA will shock the patients with electric shocks, playing tapes through hypnosis. This is why we shouldn't watch the news, or this is why we shouldn't watch the mainstream media all the time, TV all the time. It is brainwashing you 24/7. You just sitting there watching TV 24/7. It's gonna mind control you. This is why people be bots. Look at it. It's right there in your face.
Hallucinations last for hours. Experts say this is what an acid trip would look like if it could be filmed.
LSD was really horrifying, very horrifying, and they gave it to me for about 12 or 15 times. One minute I would see the doctor there, the next minute I wouldn't see him there, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I remember them telling me that I was getting smaller and smaller, and I really felt myself getting smaller. And they were bringing me back in time, way back, At one point I almost felt like I was just about to be born, really, that far back in memory. And they were really, really probing, asking all kinds of questions, and I felt I didn't have any control. I had to answer. I didn't feel I had any control. I was completely, like they had complete control over me.
And when I finally got to go out the door, that was something different too. And I figured that would never happen without the preparation we had readying the team. And so I
I feel nervous, a little bit overwhelmed. I feel a little shaky. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no, it's good. 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 I feel a little shaky. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no.
Until this day, people are still controlled under a MK Ultra still. Basically, MK Ultra is a mind control program. It was a human experimental program designed and undertaken by the CIA. It was made by the CIA. They will use LSD to weaken individuals' confessions through brainwashing, psychological torture. The CIA will use this method called deep patterning. So they will give these patients drugs to reduce their mind so they can take over their mind. Basically take over you, basically your personality, everything. They put patients under a sleep treatment. The CIA will shock the patients with electric shocks, playing tapes through hypnosis. This is why we shouldn't watch the news, or this is why we shouldn't watch the mainstream media all the time, TV all the time. It is brainwashing you 24/7. You just sitting there watching TV 24/7. It's gonna mind control you. This is why people be bots. Look at it. It's right there in your face.
Hallucinations last for hours. Experts say this is what an acid trip would look like if it could be filmed.
LSD was really horrifying, very horrifying, and they gave it to me for about 12 or 15 times. One minute I would see the doctor there, the next minute I wouldn't see him there, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I remember them telling me that I was getting smaller and smaller, and I really felt myself getting smaller. And they were bringing me back in time, way back. At one point I almost felt like I was just about to be born, really, that far back in memory. And they were really, really probing, asking all kinds of questions, and I felt I didn't have any control. I had to answer. I didn't feel I had any control. I was completely, like they had complete control over me.
And when I finally got to go out the door, that was something different too. And I figured that would never happen without the preparation we had raiding the team. And so
Really bad, so nervous, a little bit overwhelmed. I feel a little shaky. I don't know. I mean, no, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. I feel a little shaky. I don't know. I mean, no.
Okay, Mitch.
Good afternoon, butterflies. This is the Awakened Butterfly, and I'm back with another video. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time coming across my channel, please check out my content. And if you enjoy the content, please don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel. How is everyone? I hope everyone's having a blessed and amazing day. I missed you guys, and I feel very honored to be able to present this video to you guys today. And speaking of video, guys, I have a very, very special video for you guys today. It is indeed a gang stalking video, and it is based around the story of Lee Henry Oswald and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. As you guys know, gang stalking is very real, and it is a form of harassment. And it also involves several tactics and methods. It's not just one method behind gang stalking. And today, guys, we will be discussing a psychological gang stalking harassment tactic. And it is called MK Ultra Mind Control. And yes, it is a form of gang stalking. And I will be talking about the story of John F. Kennedy and how it is possible that MK Ultra was used as a gang stalking tactic in his assassination. I will also be relating this situation to the fact that MK Ultra is still being used to this very day. I will give all of my commentary, and I will give my opinion at the end based on all of the facts that I present to you today. Guys, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar with this story, and it is a very long story. There's a lot of research involved with collecting facts on this story. What I did was collect the main parts. There's a lot. I didn't include every single detail of the story, but I included the main parts of the story in order for us to gain a full understanding about the subject at hand. Meaning the reasons why many people are acting distorted and like they're kind of spaced out, and many people are also behaving as if they're in some sort of trance to this very day. And I will provide some video clips to show you guys what I mean. Okay, guys, today, like I said, we will be discussing MK Ultra, and we're going to read the Google definition of MK Ultra because I want to give you guys the full meaning of what it is. It's actually a project that was actually illegal. It was an illegal human experiment program. It was designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, which is also known as the CIA. And they formed this project with intentions to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken people and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. So the definition within itself pretty much explains why it could most possibly, most certainly have been used and still is used as a gang stalking tactic to this very day. Now, there's a difference between mind control and hypnosis. And these are actually two things that can take place during the MK Ultra project. Mind control, guys, is pretty much brainwashing. And it's usually by people of an authority, a high authority, people that have, money and muscle and power over others. It's usually people that are in occults, organizations, and governmental groups. And they usually coercively persuade and influence the mind of others to get them to do something. And it seems that the people that are mainly targeted in this situation are strong thinkers, strong-minded people who stand on their own and think for themselves, and they're not easily persuaded by others. Hollywood's industry, guys, there's also a lot that goes on where you can tell that MK Ultra is being implemented. And this is because they're using a lot of people in the industry to push a specific agenda, especially our youth and people that they feel that can be easily broken. They attack them and they brainwash them into pushing agendas that they want everyone else in society to adapt to. Hypnosis, on the other hand, guys, it's a trance-induced mental state. And this is where the mind is intensely focused on a specific subject matter or a command given by the hypnosis, which is the person that is putting the other person under the trance-induced mental state. Now, as a result of the consumption of a certain psychedelic is what has to take place when performing the MK Ultra project. And it is usually certain psychedelics like LSD, ecstasy, or mushrooms. But mainly in this situation, they were using LSD. So that's mainly what we will be discussing today. Now, guys, I will be referencing this theory that we will be talking about today in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and the accused assassin behind his demise, Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, the theory based on the CIA using MK Ultra mind control and psychedelics in an attempt to create the perfect assassin during the Cold War, which was known as the Vietnam War at this time. And the same tactics that are still being used today as a gang stalking harassment tactic was used in order to break their target and other specific individuals that serve as a threat to many national and community occult groups and organizations. MK Ultra was a top secret project created by the CIA. And under this project, there were many conducted experiments, even to U.S. citizens who were unaware they were even being used to test a secret governmental development. The CIA at this time were conducting some experiments using LSD, ecstasy, and other psychedelics for the purpose of gathering information, psychological torture, and mind control, including hypnosis. The project MK Ultra was also said to have lasted from about 1953 until 1973. Now, the details behind this programming, guys, didn't become publicly known until 1975. And this is after the CIA was put under investigation for numerous illegal activities throughout the United States, and as well as in other countries all over the world. In the 1950s and 1960s, it was considered the rise of the Cold War, which is also known as the Vietnam War. And this raised many concerns for the United States because they were afraid that North Korea and Chinese agents were using MK Ultra mind control to brainwash the U.S. prisoners during the war in Korea. Now, as a result of this, Allen Dulles, which was hired by John F. Kennedy as the director-in-chief of the CIA, approved the use of MK Ultra project to the United States in 1953. At this time, the United States' purpose for using this project was to create different tactics using psychedelics and other methods against the Soviet Union by blocking out their threats using war, and to also control human actions and behavior with drugs and other forms of psychological manipulation. And this is where heavy hypnosis also took place as a form of psychological manipulation at this time, guys. And the MK Ultra project consisted of over 150 human experiments that involved psychedelics, electroshock therapy, paralytic techniques as well. And when they said paralytic techniques, they were meaning things such as anesthesia. Some individuals knew they were being used for the testing, and others did not, even when they began to experience the effects of the hallucinogens from the anesthesia and other side effects from the experiment. And these tests were also conducted in several hospitals, prisons, and universities in Canada and the United States. So I'm pretty sure at this time there were many people that were under MK Ultra mind control that were having all of these symptoms, and many people were unaware of it. And there were probably a lot of people that were being admitted into mental institutions at this time as well. MK Ultra was also experimented through not only drugs and hypnosis and electroshock therapy, but also through polygraphs, radiations, toxins, and chemicals. Now, there were actually 3 types of subjects that were being tested at this time. There were some, like I said before, who were willing to undergo the testing, and there were others who were under heavy brainwashing, meaning they were coerced into, being forced into the testing, and there were others who had no idea that they were being tested. Around this time, many had made headlines as their outlandish behavior was determined by many. Many people were starting to recognize that there were large groups of people that were displaying outlandish behavior. And it seems that they were up under some type of mind control. People started to realize this. Whitney Bulger was a former organized crime boss hitman who explained his bizarre experience as a test subject for MK Ultra project. And he was an inmate in Coleman Federal Prison. And at this time, guys, many prisons, hospitals participated in these projects. And a lot of them, too, were not aware that they were being used as subjects or willingly letting their patients or inmates being used as subjects for these type of experiments. And at this time, Whitney Bulger was being used as a subject for testing the MK Ultra project. And he explained seeing different objects appearing before his eyes. He also recalled seeing a dog head appear out of nowhere, and he also explained that he was being injected with LSD before his testing, and he said that he felt like he was going insane when he was going through the trip as a result of the acid that was being injected into his body, because that's pretty much what LSD is. The CIA began to implement the use of LSD into their experiments under the approval of poison expert and chemist Sidney Gottlieb. He felt that the CIA would benefit from using LSD in many of their MK Ultra experiments. And this was due to the drug's ability to alter the mind when they were doing experiments using psychological torture and brainwashing. And the CIA also used drugs like heroin, methamphetamine, and mushrooms. And that also raises a lot of concerns, because I see a lot of videos where people are very interested in the use of mushrooms, and it's just, I've never used it, but I feel like anything that alters the mind where you have no control over your thinking is detrimental, especially in these times where there's a lot of mind control techniques taking place due to people trying to indoctrinate and desensitize society for what's, I don't want to say for what's coming, but I want to say for the enemy's plans that he's continuing to plan and has already, a lot of the plans that he's already implemented. Let me just say that. Now, I want to talk about Lee Henry Oswald and his connection with the CIA. Now, there are many theories behind Kennedy's assassination, and many people believe that he was hired by an assassin who served as a U.S. Marine veteran. I'm sorry, I didn't mean this. I said that wrong. Many believe that Oswald was hired as an assassin, and he also served as a U.S. Marine veteran in the 1950s, which means that he was around during the time that the CIA was using psychedelic drugs on many U.S. soldiers and Marines for MK Ultra technique projects. So there's a good chance that Oswald was used as a subject in those experiments, meaning that he too was under MK Ultra. Many also believe that it could be a result of John F. Kennedy firing Allen Dulles, which was the chief director of the CIA. And we're going to get into that later on too, guys. November 22nd of 1963, Lee Henry Oswald was accused of assassinating John F. Kennedy. Now, we're going to go through a timeline explaining his behaviors and that led up to the event, which I feel it just seems as if they were not actions of his own, but we're going to get into it. In 1956, he joined the U.S. Marines, and he ended his military service in 1959 and informed Russian authorities of his desire to move to the Soviet Union. There were some suspicions and debates over him moving because many people believe that he was a possible spy for the U.S. And he was allowed to relocate to Minsk, Russia, but he was under close monitoring by the KGB. And the KGB, guys, is the Committee for State Security. It's the Communist Party security. And it was possible that Oswald was hired as a spy for the U.S. CIA. Now, Kennedy is also linked to the CIA, and we will also be discussing that as well. He then, Oswald, in 2 years, became unsatisfied with the way he was living in Minsk, and he returned back to the United States in June of 1962. Now, this is where Oswald and his family resided in Dallas, Texas. Around this time, Oswald purchased a .38 caliber handgun through the mail, and later he also obtained a rifle. He asked his wife to take a photo of him holding these weapons, which would later be used as possible evidence in the assassination of Kennedy. Now, April of 1963, which is exactly 7 months before the demise of Kennedy, Oswald went to the home of ex-General Edwin A. Walker, and he aimed and shot through his window, and he missed. So before the assassination of Kennedy, he aimed to assassinate Edwin A. Walker as well. Now, let's see who Edwin A. Walker is and why he would want to do this. Okay, guys. Now, Edmund A. Walker was a United States Army Major General who served in World War II and the Korean War. And let's see. All right, I'm still here, guys. I'm just collecting some information. Okay, guys, I realize that I have already have some information that I wanted to discuss on Walker, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue on with my commentary. I'm sorry about that. Okay, Walker wasn't on good terms with Kennedy's. He was arrested on 4 federal charges, including insurrection and sedition against the U.S. upon the orders of Robert F. Kennedy. He was temporarily detained in a mental institution, and he also had to undergo a 90-day psychiatric evaluation. By September 1963, Oswald traveled to Mexico City in an attempt to gain legal access, but was denied due to no availability at that time. But after later research, guys, I realized that he later on got approved for the visa transit, but he had already went back to the United States. He then returned back to Texas, working at a school book depository, and his family stayed with a friend at the time that he returned back. If Oswald was once a former Marine for the U.S., why would he desire to move to Cuba or the Soviet Union? That is my question, guys. And after research, I found out that in the early year of 1963, his interest in communism developed over time into his interest in supporting Cuba. So he went from being a U.S. Marine that was once in the war fighting against the Soviet Union, the Cuban and Soviet Union, to now being a supporter of Cuba. Allegedly. And all these things are alleged, guys, that I'm presenting to you today. Even though I researched this information, I'm still going to say alleged. Now, on the afternoon of November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was making his public appearance through the streets of Dallas, Texas. And he and his wife were on a motorcade. At this time, Lee Harvey Oswald was spotted on the 6th floor of the building in which he worked with a rifle. 30 minutes later, everyone heard gunfire, and this is when they saw that something had fatally happened to the president. And Oswald did not stop there, guys. He was later seen leaving the crime scene by a local police officer, and in which he was confronted by that officer, and he was said to have brought that officer also to his demise. Oswald was later found at a movie theater in a Dallas, Texas suburban area where he was then arrested. Now, over the next 48 hours after his arrest, he was arraigned and interrogated. And he was also being placed in lineups for witnesses at that time as well. At the time of his arrest, he stated, and I quote, "I didn't shoot anybody, and they've taken me in because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union." Now, guys, on September, now he said that he lived in the Soviet Union, but on September 27th of 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald arrived in Mexico City, and he requested that he apply for a transit visa at the Cuban consulate. Now, he was hoping to visit Cuba on his way to the Soviet Union. Oswald was told by Cuban consular officials that in order for him to do so, he would need approval from the Soviet Union. The visit never took place due to a late approval from the Soviet consulate. However, the Cuban embassy approved the transit on October 18th of 1963. But as I mentioned earlier, by this time, Oswald had already left Mexico City and headed back to the United States. Now, guys, 11 days after the demise of John F. Kennedy, Oswald wrote a letter to the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. Now, what I'm about to read is the exact words from the letter that Oswald wrote. He stated, and I quote, "Had I been able to reach Soviet embassy in Havana as planned, there would have been time to complete our business." So it seems that he was indicating that he had some unfinished business that he had to complete with Soviet Union, which would explain his desire to go there, allegedly. The Warren Commission came to the conclusion that Lee Oswald made a trip to Mexico City and the Soviet Union and Cuban consulates. Now, concerning questions at this time were raised, guys, determining whether someone disguised as Mr. Henry Oswald actually showed up to the Soviet embassy. Also, after later investigations by the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which were the ones who investigated Kennedy's demise, they also came to the conclusion, guys, that it was possible that someone signed in as a visitor to the Soviet consulates using his name. So it's possible that Oswald could have been allegedly framed in this situation. When being arrested for Kennedy's assassination, he also stated, "I'm just a patsy." Now, guys, let's read the definition for what a patsy is. The Google definition states that a patsy is a person who is easily taken advantage of, especially by being cheated or blamed for something. Now, if we look back on Oswald's situation, he was very vulnerable to be taken advantage of. He had a rough upbringing. He enlisted as a U.S. Marine at a young age. He enlisted around the time that the CIA was conducting several experiments on young Marines and U.S. soldiers with MK Ultra and psychedelics in order to send them out on dangerous missions towards their opponents. So he was, he was vulnerable, and he came into the system at a very, I would say at a very demanding time and I feel that at that time, he had no control over what he was witnessing or going through as a young man in the military. During this police interrogation, he also admitted to leaving his rooming home after leaving his place of work. And he also admitted to changing clothes and arming himself with the .38 caliber revolver before leaving his residence and going to the movie theater. He didn't mention anything before or during that situation, which would include the assassination of Kennedy. He actually denied assassinating Kennedy, and he also denied bringing Officer Dallas Tippit to his demise. He also had a selective service system card when he was arrested with his forged signature on the card, and it was also collected by officers. And once the card was collected, they also realized that it was signed under, it had his picture on it, but it was signed under an alias name by the name of Alec James Heidel, which could possibly explain someone signing into the Cuban consulates under his name. He refused to answer any questions concerning the card. He would not answer any questions concerning that card as to why he had it or why it was his picture under an alias name. Oswald was being escorted by Dallas detectives from a police headquarters where he was brought to his demise by Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby was a nightclub owner who was an alleged member of the Chicago outlet, which was known as a mob. He was also said to have worked for the Kennedys by helping John F. Kennedy boost his votings. And he did so by causing physical threats upon anyone who did not desire to vote for Kennedy at that time. Kennedy also made an agreement with Jack Ruby that if he was selected, he would lighten the FBI's pursuit on the Chicago mob. Because there were a lot of illegal activities that were going on through a lot of the casinos that were being ran by the crime mob in Chicago. And John F. Kennedy was said to have turned on the mob leader, Sam Giancana, resulting in his assassination as well as his brother Robert Kennedy's demise. Sam Giancana is the leader of the mob group. Okay, guys, now we're going to discuss the connection between Sam Giancana and Allen Dulles. Now, as you know, Allen Dulles was the chief director of the CIA hired by John F. Kennedy. And he also carried out a lot of techniques from MK Ultra towards the opponents of John F. Kennedy. He did a lot of John F. Kennedy's dirty work, if you must say. Now Sam Giancana also was arrested for a fatal crime against someone but he was released after his witness was found unalived. So keep in mind that Mr. I hope I'm saying his name right. Mr. Garciana pretty much was a known hitman that if he did a crime, he would get rid of his witnesses if they tried to testify. And in a lot of situations, when you really think about it, I see Mr. Oswald as not only a person who committed a crime, but I also saw him as a witness to a lot of things as well. In 1960, Mr. Garciana and Alan Dulles, which is the director of the CEA, was said to have planned the demise of Fidel Castro, which is a young activist and attorney who was famous for turning Cuba into a communist state. He was a very big threat to Kennedy at that time. He served as a threat to the U.S. because many of the underhanded and wicked actions that were being pushed, such as drugs, alcohol, gambling, and prostitution, were not tolerable to him. And many of these acts were also taking place in casinos ran by mafia members. And Garciana used his heavy mob ties to assist President Kennedy in defeating Richard Nixon. It was also said at that time that Nixon and Kennedy were both seeing the same woman, which means that a lot of, it was not just because of a lot of the attacks that Kennedy were pushing on Nixon were not just because of the election, but it was more of a personal matter as well. And I'm going to discuss a little bit more about those type of things. When people of a higher authority use their power, they use other people to do their dirty work for their own personal gains. It was said also, guys, that Kennedy did business with Garciana for his own personal advances. And after he was elected president, he made his brother Robert Kennedy U.S. Attorney General. And after he did that, they began to work together to eliminate organized crime. And in order to do that, one way was by targeting the mob leader Garciana and getting him taken off the streets, taking him down, his mob and his organization and everything that he was doing illegally on the streets. This made Garciana feel very betrayed at that time because he felt used. He felt that Kennedy used him to get in a higher authority, and once he did so, he turned on him. Now, guys, although I'm explaining the situation with Kennedy, I'm not bashing the president. I'm not bashing anyone. I'm just relaying these things to the handler and the gang stalker, and how people can use people to do their dirty work. I'm just stating facts at the end of the day, so I'm not here to bash anyone. Okay, guys, December 2022 is when the relationship with Oswald and the CIA was said to have taken place. Oswald had several interactions with the CIA. And this happened around the time that he served as a Marine at the Atsugi Naval Air Facility in Japan in 1957. Now, around this time, guys, the CIA were conducting heavy testing on U.S. Marine military soldiers with LSD and MK Ultra techniques. Atsugi Naval Facility also served as a launching pad for U-2 spy air flights over the Soviet Union, as well as a networking area of the CIA's research with psychedelic drugs. So there were a lot of Marines and soldiers being used as subjects around this time. I'm almost, possibly sure, based on research, that Oswald was one of many Marine soldiers that was induced with LSD and sent on dangerous missions overseas. And David Talbot mentioned this to be true in his 2015 biography that he wrote about former CIA director Alan Dulles. And he named the book The Devil's Chessboard. And when you think about this situation on a spiritual level, it does make you think about the devil playing chess. It's like, okay, I'm going to take this person in and I'm going to be friends with them in order to get them to do this for me. And then I'm going to get rid of them. It's like the people that they're using, they're like pawns in the chess game. So it's like the devil using people to do their dirty work, and then he turns on them as well. As of last year, and when I say last year, guys, I mean as of 2022, a document on behalf of the Biden administration released a recent document revealing that Oswald was hired by the CIA as a gunman in the assassination of Kennedy in 1963. Now, it is said that Kennedy fired Alan Dulles due to him failing the Bay of Pigs invasion attack. And during this attack, this is where the CIA were trying to force activist Cuban leader Fidel Castro from his authority during the Kennedy administration, because Kennedy saw him as a major threat. A report from 1978 explains how a CIA finance clerk by the name of James Wilcott Jr. told a House panel investigator after Kennedy's assassination that Mr. Oswald was hired to assassinate the president when he served as a Marine in Atsugi. So, if you think about it, guys, that means that the plan to assassinate Kennedy was in place long before it even took place. This means that he was pretty much he was placed under MK Ultra and assigned to do so pretty much not long after he was put in to serve as a U.S. Marine. Also, the version of this report was declassified by the Trump administration in 2017. The demise of President John F. Kennedy still remains unsolved. The mystery is still unsolved, guys. People have their theories. People have their thoughts on, what they feel that happened. And there's a lot of people that know the actual truth. It is also said that the CIA was said to have put a dose of LSD in Fidel Castro's food with LSD. The agency explained to Richard Nixon that the drug would have Castro behaving in an irrational manner and it would damage his public image. Also, guys, the CIA's defense to have no relationship with Oswald was also found to be untrue due to the fact that the CIA associate by the name of George D. Marenschild, and I hope I said his name right. We're just going to call him George, guys. His last name is yeah. He became very close with Oswald months before President Kennedy's assassination as well. Now, let's get down to the nitty gritty of this, guys. I've presented the information that I felt would help support my claim. And now we're going to discuss the handlers, the gang stalkers, and other people who play a role in this situation. Okay, now we all know that a handler is the person who has keen interest in the target for their own personal reasons or advancements. Now, in this situation, President Kennedy would be considered as the handler because he provided finances for resources in order to defeat his targets, which were the Korean and Soviet Union during the Vietnam War. He also provided the funds to hire mob leaders into threatening individuals into voting for him. He also paid organized crime leaders to assist him in defeating Richard Nixon in the presidential election. He also funded CIA chief and other CIA members for the use of MK-Ultra mind control experiments and attacks against his enemies. When they failed to properly carry out the missions, they were let go and replaced. If he felt they no longer served him, as with the crime mob group, their muscle, authority, and street credibility that he used them for his own personal advances, such as winning the presidential election. And once he became president, he formed a plan to get mob leader Sam Giancana arrested and off the streets. His continuous missions and plots to destroy Fidel Castro also, I feel, created a stream of reckless behaviors that caused a domino effect of destruction. Sometimes, guys, when people are very selfish and they manipulate others and use them as a pawn in their own selfish game, it starts to create a domino effect of chaos. It seems that everything starts to go wrong from there, all stemming from one selfish action or decision. Now, Allen Dulles, Sam Garciana, and Harvey Oswald, they were the main three gang stalkers on Kennedy's behalf. But in general, they were also targets. Now, the plot twist to this is, since they too, meaning Sam Garciana and Allen Dulles, possessed money and authority and also muscle, in Sam Garcana's case, because he was a part of the mob and he was associated with some dangerous people, were able to carry out the same gang stalking tactics against others that were carried out against them. So, even though they were manipulated and used, they were also able to use those same methods against someone else because they possessed the resources, the finances, and the authority. Now, Oswald, in this case, although he served as a gang stalker in some cases, he also was a flying monkey. And this is because he was placed under MK-Ultra with induced doses of LSD, as well as being coerced and possibly put under hypnosis into carrying out dangerous missions, such as spying and causing physical harm to others. Now, guys, I feel that MK-Ultra still exists and is still being used through psychedelics and other forms. However, I also feel that since the investigation behind MK-Ultra has been conducted in the past, there has been more developed forms of hypnosis and mind control created in order to get the same effect without being so obvious. Now, Oswald could have possibly been under mind control when the assassination took place. After he was ordered not to carry out the plan by the KGB, which research, I found that later on he was associated with the KGB as well. So the fact that he was associated with them and was also being watched by them lets you know that he too was not only a harasser, but he was also a targeted victim. After he was ordered not to carry out the plan, he was still persistent to do so, as if he was under some type of hypnosis. Because with hypnosis, the mind is in a consistent trance and is focused on carrying out a certain command or a certain mission. And I feel that that's what happened with Oswald. I do feel that there were also other people that were involved, and it wasn't just him. And you can also tell that from the evidence of the ID, the service card with an alias name and his picture on it. That also let you know that there were other things that were taking place behind the scene, and he was pretty much used as a pawn, in someone else's game. And when you look at social media, guys, especially now, you see a lot of these videos where people are talking about, individuals flipping out and just doing outlandish things. It just doesn't seem normal. It's far from normal. It lets you know that the enemy is still using individuals as pawns in his game in order to carry out his dirty work. And this is why we have to pray against all acts of witchcraft and sorcery, as well as MK Ultra mind control, hypnosis, and also praying for protection against occult and organized crime mob group attacks. And I'm going to do, I also have a video that I'm going to do about that as well. Because although people may feel that a lot of street gangs and organizations they pretty much wouldn't serve as maybe as a threat to people that they're rivals, but maybe not others, because they don't want to be under the radar of law enforcement. That's far from the truth. A lot of these organized crime groups are actually working with law enforcement. So that's a shocking truth. As much as you hear them say they avoid the police, a lot of them work for the police as well. Guys, I really hope that this video helped someone. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I know that it's rather long. I hope that you guys enjoy the fact that it's long. I know a lot of you probably don't have the time to watch this video, but if you do, I really would appreciate it if you did, because a lot of the things that were taking place in the past, it's like history is repeating itself, and it's still taking place now. We're still under spiritual warfare. As you can see, spiritual warfare has been taking place since day one. You would never have thought that many of these people that claim to serve our country and community would go under such wicked things behind the scenes in order to be put in a certain position or in order to get a certain thing done. But it's true. I love you guys so much. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I have more content to present to you guys. And until the next video, peace and love. I love you guys. Peace.